What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of the Jace for Days podcast. I'm Josh. He's Josh. We got Jace Jumpers, Jaron Jackson Jr.'s, John Morant's, Joe Johnson's, Ja Raffs, of course. We've got Jace. We got him for days. Josh, how you doing?
I would like to revise my answer from last podcast.
And which answer might that be?
If UConn wins this thing, UConn has a very strong case to be the best team in the country.
Here's what they are. And, Texas is the best mixture we have this year, I think, of ceiling and well-roundedness.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
And on that list, UConn is right behind them. In terms of their lack of holes and their talent,
mm-hmm.
and their lack of glaring, shortcomings. Yeah. I think UConn might be second on that list. And maybe that was just the way to approach this tournament, was to pick the two teams that it's the most difficult to pick their biggest flaw. And are those two teams at the top of that list? I kind of think that they are.
Yeah. And the confusing part about this, and we don't need to get into a whole conversation here because we'll talk about UConn again, obviously. And we talked about this when it happened. There was just no real explanation as to why they just started losing. I mean, they played good teams, but obviously they shouldn't have gone into the slump they did. And we talked about this idea of it's not like there was one thing to point to and go, oh, well, that's the issue. I mean, they turned it, there were things that they didn't do as well. But like you said, I
know exactly what the issue was.
What was it?
They weren't getting Adam Snoger the ball enough. He wasn't playing enough.
Oh. You did talk about that.
But structurally, you're right. There wasn't an obvious reason.
Yeah. And now they figured it out again, and here they are. But if you can, I have Texas at the top of that list because they've been way more consistent. But if you want to say, if UConn goes on and wins this thing and you want to say they were the best team in the country and they just kind of lost their identity there for a little while, mm-hmm. That's fine by me because it's the reason I picked them in the Big East tournament. They're one of those teams that you go, well, if they get rolling, good luck. And that's exactly what's happening.
The scariest part about what happened last night is that Adamas Sanogo was 3 of 11 from the field for 10 points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Despite our best efforts to try and talk about Gonzaga and UConn first, we're going to talk about Florida Atlantic and Kansas State first, because when you lose by 28, you don't get to be talked about first. Florida Atlantic, they're on their way to Houston after beating Memphis by the skin of their teeth in the round of 64. Here go the Owls and the Fighting Dusty Mays all the way to Houston after a 79-76 victory over the Kansas State Wildcats. Josh, I think the thing that's most impressive for me about this Florida Atlantic team is that they just do a lot of things well. Mm-hmm. And they've played good, not spectacular this entire tournament, and they just keep finding ways to win basketball games. Like they shot it pretty well in this game, but it's not like they were 59% as a team. They were 48%. You would love to be somewhere around 50% as a team every night. So that's not like that's a poor shooting performance by any stretch of the imagination. And they made a decent amount of threes this time around, 9 of 23. But it's not like I haven't come away from any Florida Atlantic game thinking, man, I'm not sure they win that game on any other night. I kind of think the opposite. And that's super impressive for a Florida Atlantic team that is on their way to the Final Four, but also, 35-3. There's got to be some of that in there. They just win a lot of games because they should win a lot of games, not because they got it on the right night.
Yeah, and there are two things in particular. that show you this is just a really, really good basketball team. One, they turned the ball over 22 times and still scored 79 points. On a day where, like you said, I mean, they did shoot 39% from three. That helps. They're also one of the better three-point shooting teams in the country, so it's not like that's completely out of character. And they shot 48% from the field. Right. They, made shots, but it's not like they shot 60% from the field. Mm-hmm. And they still scored 79 points. I'm one of the best teams from the best conference in the country. And the second thing is, they won this game in part because they're deeper than Kansas State. They have more guys who go get you double-digit points. They had 4 of them in this game, and Vlad Golden was spectacular. He was better than 14 and 13, as good as that is. The way he just controlled the paint, the offensive rebounding, he had 6 of them, all of that. That's what you don't normally see from these mid-major, and this is, again, why they're not a Cinderella, right? It's usually the Oral Roberts thing of, this team clearly isn't, built with a bunch of guys who are capable of beating the best teams in the country. But you got 2 of them, in Asmus and O'Banner. Mm-hmm. Or you've got a bunch of, kind of the FDU super small guys. It's just a different style of play teams aren't used to, whatever it might be. These guys have, they don't really have wings, right? They just have a bunch of guards and the bigs. But the starting center is a 7-footer. And the guards are all just really, really good. That was what struck me about this game, and we'll get into the Kansas State side of this, but they played 9 guys at least 12 minutes. Mm-hmm. They are deep. And the interchange, Michael Forrest was kind of in and out of the rotation at points, or had it, at least had his game time wavering. And he was the free throw specialist who also hit all those threes in the second half of the Tennessee game. Mm-hmm. And he's started, he's the one guy who's been around kind of forever. He started, I think it's something like 80 plus games in his career before the rest of these guys got there. That's your 8th, 9th guy. That's how deep they are.
They should be thought of either in the same way that a UConn, an 8 seed, 9 seed, was UConn 8 or 9 when they won that title?
8?
It was one of the two. I'm almost positive it was one of the two. Either you think about this Florida Atlantic team in that realm, or more in the realm of like a Butler 5 seed getting to the Final Four. Right? Nobody thinks that Butler team, the first one in particular, and the second one was not nearly as good and had less business getting to the Final Four. But nobody looks back on that 2010 Final Four thinking that Butler was a Cinderella, right? Like, they had, to your point, like their guard play was really, really spectacular. Anyway, it was a different makeup of a team because the most important player on their team was a 6'8" wing. But the point still standing that you might be surprised to see this team get this far, and you can be that without thinking that they're a Cinderella, because I think you're right. They're beyond. There's almost a disrespect that comes with being called a Cinderella.
Oh yeah,
an implication that it's never meant as a disrespect, but there's an implied disrespect coming from it that you shouldn't really be here, but you are, and that's fun. And like, are there teams in that region who were better than Florida Atlantic? Yes, but that doesn't mean that Florida Atlantic doesn't deserve or doesn't belong there, and it's some sort of fluke. I think it's become pretty clear that if we played this field of 68 10 times, that Florida Atlantic gets to the Elite 8 more than just once, right? That they would be right there on multiple different occasions.
UConn, that team was a 7.
Were they really?
The last team?
No, the Kemba team.
The Kemba team was a 3.
The Kemba team was a 3. Sorry, then the UConn, the Shabazz Napier team.
7.
The Kemba team was a 3 seed?
People forget. Okay, they went 9-9 in the Big East.
Why is that team considered crap then? Why is...
I don't know. That team didn't lose a
Because I'm
tournament.
not crazy, right?
No, it's really weird. This narrative, I think we've talked about this before. The narrative is bizarre. That team didn't lose a tournament game all season. They won, I think it was the Maui. I'm going to pull up their schedule just to make this point one more time.
I got you.
They won... Was it the Maui?
They won 3 neutral games. Let's see. Let me look at the box score. I'll tell you where it was. Yeah, it was in Hawaii.
Yeah, they won
at the Civic Center. They beat Michigan State, Wichita State, Michigan State, and Kentucky.
That's 2 top 10 wins, by the way. Michigan State was 2, Kentucky was 8. They won 500 in Big East play, and then won the Big East tournament by beating 4 ranked teams consecutively. Yeah, the idea that this was some kind of underdog. They played in a juggernaut Big East and were 500, and were excellent outside of that and won the Maui. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, fine. I apologize for that.
They were 32-9.
Okay. All right, I'll allow it. Fine.
But the Shabazz Napier team was a 7. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But to drive home this point, the Butler team that went to the Final Four in 2010 finished the season 12th at KenPom. Florida Atlantic is 17th at KenPom on this Sunday morning. So much more in that realm than, and I don't know where Oral Roberts was, but the point being is that that team is for real. That team is for real. On the Kansas State side of things, Marquise Noel spectacular, 30 points, 12 assists, 5 steals. I'm a little upsetty spaghetti with him that he passed the ball on the final possession. I'm a little upsetty spaghetti with him, Josh. I'm a little upset about it.
You were more than a little in the immediate aftermath.
I just, and I told multiple people this. I said, if I've got 30 and 10 in any game, if I'm rocking like that in any game whatsoever, and there's a final shot that needs to be taken, we could be playing pickup at the Y. Like, you need to drop me to the floor. Like, you need to like if I try to pass you the ball, you should throw it back at my face with intent to break my nose. Like, it is. Right. It's the passer in Marquise that's ingrained deeply in Marquise Noel. That was, because it was to the point where they weren't going to get a good look. By the time they got it down the floor, they were going to have to make a shot that was going to go in about 1 every 100 shots. Right. And so the guy he passed it, and I don't even remember who it was.
I think it was Ish Masood.
The guy who he passed it to was slightly more open than he was, but he was also kind of moving in his direction and was bringing his defender with him. So it's not like he passed it up for a great one.
Right.
And that's the place where, like, if we're not going to get a good shot, you're going to take the not good shot.
Mm-hmm.
And as frustrated as I was by that, I was also just bummed that that's how his 2-game stretch here came to an end, was with passing. It would have been such a cherry on top moment of these 2 games that he played at Madison Square Garden. But to see him kind of watch the clock go to 0 without the ball in his hands was not something I wanted to see.
And it almost looked like he kind of realized what he had done as the buzzer sounded. He went.
Yes. Him putting his hands on his head after the buzzer sounded was not him upset that the game game was like maybe it was 15% that. 85% of it was, I can't believe I just passed a basketball.
Yeah.
He'll never tell you that, but that's absolutely what the response was.
Interested that he is the decision maker, didn't get them a shot. Right. It's tangentially. I mean, it's clearly related to not being able to win. But right, that's how it ended. That's how the final possession went. That he let the ball get out of his hands, and there was no benefit to it. Yeah.
And I've never seen, because you made this point yesterday morning. Like, I've never seen a guy so in control, so with the ball on the string, so making so many right passes and decisions for 39 minutes, kind of make a couple really weird ones in both games. right? You talked about the 3 that he decided to take, and right there was a tip, and it ended up being okay. And then they get the inbounds pass, and Masood makes the shot that he does in the Sweet 16 game. But I've never been so impressed with the guy for 39 minutes, and just seen him make two questionable decisions in back-to-back games. And like at one point, and I tweeted this, at one point he made a pass. It was like 10 seconds or so. It was the possession before, and he had a chance to take a step back 3-pointer and saw, I think it was Tomlin. And he made the pass to cut the lead to 1. To cut the lead to 1. And I tweeted, you know what, last night I think he shoots that 3. And I don't know if there was some, and I find it hard to believe that Jerome Tang would do anything that would put doubt in Marquise Noel's mind when he decides to take a shot in the final 60 seconds. I find that hard to believe, but it's almost like it kind of felt like he had learned from the decisions he made the night before, and almost to the point of, of fault, right? That then when we get to 2 seconds, you've been the best player on the floor all night. You need to be the one to take that shot. But so it was weird, because I thought the possession before he made the right, because the game could have been over right that second if he didn't make that shot, and he found a guy, and it's still a 1 possession game, and now you have a chance to tie it with a 2 if you get only 1 of 2 on the other end from Florida Atlantic, and they made every single free throw down the stretch that they needed to. So credit to them to keep forcing Kansas State to score and ultimately have to make a 3 at the end to send it to overtime. But it was, those 2 possessions were so, because I thought he made the exact right decision the possession before. So I'm not sitting here, I don't want to make it sound like I'm frustrated only with Marquise Noel's decision making in the last 30 seconds of the game. I was just a little sad he made that decision on the final possession.
In that building, the way that season had gone, that
was his Kemba moment. That was his Kemba crossover moment.
You want him to live and die. You want your team to live and die with that shot from him.
And I think they ultimately get a better shot if he just goes down the floor with, I'm the one shooting this. Right. It seemed like he wasn't totally sure what he wanted to do with it, which is fine. And that's also the let's try to get the best shot that's ingrained in him. But the best shot on that possession, when you have 6 seconds to get it down the floor and get a shot up, is always him just being, okay, I'm taking this shot. How do I get the best shot for me right now? And you probably you at least get a shot, right? Because they didn't even get something up towards the rim.
The 2 other points I want to make real quick on Kansas State. One, from Florida Atlantic's game plan was excellent. Marquise Noel is going to get his. He's going to make plays. You can't stop him. You can stop him at the rim a little bit. You can force him to take some tough shots. Force him to take some floaters with size, surrounding him. And make the other guys beat you. And when Keontae Johnson is in foul trouble all game, and Keontae Johnson takes an unnecessary, was it the 4th or the 5th? I think it was the 5th. He was diving for a loose ball or something, and he just didn't need to put his body in the position that he did, and it was a foul.
It was vintage. I've struggled all game, and I'm trying to get out of it with aggressive play. Trying
to force things in. So when he's in foul trouble, never really in a rhythm, and he doesn't get to double figures, we've talked about this. Naquan Tomlin had 14. That was your second leading scorer. It's a formula to beat this team, no matter what Marquise Noel does, because you didn't have somebody come out there and give you 20 to make up for the fact that Keontae Johnson had 9. And a lot of that had to do with foul trouble because of because of Vlad Golden's presence, because of a couple decisions Johnson made, because of the pressure that Florida Atlantic put on him. And all of a sudden, they still almost found a way to win, which is a credit to Kansas State. But that was really good from Dusty May, of kind of watching how the previous game unfolded and said, we're not gonna lose that way. If we lose, it'll be because of something else.
Keontae, that's his lowest point total, tied lowest point total of the entire season.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, can I throw out my Jerome Tang theory quickly before we get to the other game?
Yeah, I've got about 90 seconds on the other game, respectfully. so yes.
They're never going to be able to recruit with Kansas, right? Or Texas or whoever. Mm-hmm. Now, I did see apparently there was a 5-star, I think, that was there to watch them. Every once in a while, they might be able to get a high-profile recruiter too. But
and, right? And I would also argue that recruiting with Kansas and that not recruiting with Kansas doesn't necessarily mean you're not getting 5 stars relatively consistently, right? Because Kansas gets 3 5-stars every year.
Yeah.
Like you getting a 5-star and one every 2 years and getting 80% of your recruits are 4 stars. I think that's achievable.
Yeah, well, and we'll have to see. My point is that, right, you have teams. Well, Texas is on its way out, but you have a team inside your own state that inherently is going to kind of win most of those recruiting battles,
right?
Because it's Kansas. So you will be limited. It is Kansas State. You're going to be limited in the recruiting space. Not that you can't land guys. Not that you can't get really good 4-stars, who then turn into really good players over 2, 3, 4 years. But there is another space that is opening up because of the world of NIL, because of the transfer portal. And that is a lot of players are going to go somewhere, not find exactly what they're looking for, want more playing time, want just a fresh start, whatever it might be, want somewhere fun because for whatever reason they're not really enjoying their college experience as much as they want. And they want, a coach and a program that's going to kind of, to a certain extent, not necessarily resurrect, that might be a little extreme, but to just allow them to kind of redefine their college career and write a different ending to their story. That's where this could be perhaps the most dominant transfer portal team in the country. Because 0 of these players started their career at Kansas State. 2 of them were on the roster last season, and this is what Jerome Tang turned them into. Right? He is cool. He is fun. He is everything that is good about college sports. He's a great coach. He makes this somewhere you want to be, and especially for guys who have kind of been around the block and had other experiences. I think that's part of what you've seen this year is how much these guys appreciate the way that this unfolded and the way they were able to come together. That is, you can do that time after time after time again because these guys are older. They get it, right? They don't need to kind of learn how to win in college. They've already done that, or at least have seen kind of what it takes. That's where I feel like Kansas State is going to be consistently successful. Is you might not get all of the freshmen coming out, and that's okay because you've got a better shot ending up with the guys who are actually going to let you have more success because they're the guys who have been around for a couple years, who know how this thing works, and you just need, that extra opportunity, that second chance, that, brighter stage. If you're Marquise Noel, for example, Naquan Tomlin comes from community college, from JUCO, and might be the best NBA prospect on the roster. This is set up for a lot of players who kind of don't get what they're looking for the first time around to go, I know that Jerome Tang and Kansas State is going to give me this the second time around because I just saw it with this group. I saw how quickly they came together. I saw how much fun they had. That's my theory.
I mean, I'm in as long as there's a couple things. The first one is that I don't want my most important player to not be somebody who's not played for Kansas State before. Ever. That's why they're in the Elite Eight. And we've talked about it before. Like if Marquise Noel wasn't at Kansas State last year, I they lose on Thursday if Marquise Noel isn't every bit as good as he was. And I would always rather build with the guys that are that started their careers with me, and I understand that that's not the way that the sport works. And to your point, that Kansas already has that locked up. So it's not that I disagree with it. I just don't want it to turn into we've got a bunch of graduate transfers.
Yeah,
I want it to be built on like they have a real shot to go to the Final Four like every 3 years because they have 4 guys that sure they transferred, but they transferred 2 years ago.
Right.
Or they transferred a year ago. They're in year 2 in the Little Apple.
And and most of this team fits that criteria.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's an important distinction there because I've also like I don't want it to be that sort of look at all of these productive graduate transfers that averaged 19 and 8 in the MEAC last year, right? That I think there's a difference. And this year towed the correct line, right? And I just hope it continues to kind of be in that realm because there are different realms of playing with transfers and playing with, you know, that kind of thing. I think that Jerome Tang has made it pretty clear. Like I just think it'll be important for guys to understand the culture Jerome Tang is creating at Kansas State.
Absolutely.
For them to have their most important teams.
Yeah.
So I don't want him to inherently strip himself of that because his talent comes from the transfer portal more than anything else.
Sure. And my argument is basically that culture is going to appeal to people who want to be part of it, and especially, you know, but sure. they will come because they want to.
Yes, but that doesn't mean you understand it. You might say, that doesn't mean you understand what it means to play at Kansas State until you play at Kansas State.
Right. Yeah. And the other part is obviously there was kind of an emergency roster situation here. Right. So moving forward,
go ahead. Sorry.
He can be a little bit more strategic about, you don't need to fill it with 10 transfers. You're going to recruit some players. You're going to have some players that stay, and then you can build, bring in those however many, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that, right, maybe it's one grad transfer that's looking for an opportunity to play at the high major level or something. And then it's, right, some other guys who started at high major programs 1-2 years, just didn't really work for whatever reason. And you then get them for 2-3 years. Yeah, because I'm with you. You can't just rebuild the roster completely every single season. This was a exceptional set of circumstances that it had to come together, and he still has guys with eligibility remaining. It's not that he completely went and got, but right, it can't. That is not a sustainable way to have success and to build and sustain the culture. I'm with you.
I would be curious to hear what his kind of philosophy, what he wanted roster building for him to look like at Kansas State, and how, like, when he got the job and how it's changed since.
Yeah.
Because
I'm sure this
I guarantee
wasn't
you this isn't the roster that he ideally would have put together.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a fact.
Maybe his philosophy is just, can I get a 5'10" guard from Harlem every single year?
I need my New York dudes. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I think Marquise Noel is from Harlem. I think I saw that.
I believe you're right. Yeah.
Okay. The other game was boring.
Was it ever?
I didn't watch. My dad texted me at one point. He said, "Man, they're just getting drummed." I said, "Yeah, I turned it off." I think I can't remember when I turned it off. Maybe when the deficit got to 30, because that's how bad UConn beat Gonzaga last night, 82-54. And Josh, let me tell you, it wasn't that close. It was not 28-point difference. It just wasn't.
Gonzaga did win the second half by 21.
Gonzaga did?
Sorry. No, that would have been some kind of first half. Sorry, UConn.
Yes, UConn did win the second half by 21. So here, I'll cut it in half. The second half wasn't that close.
Yeah.
Jordan Hawkins, 20 points, 6 of 15. We already mentioned that Adama Sanogo was not great in this game. 10 and 10. There was a double 10, 10 and 6. He was he had a really great passing first half, and then filled the stat sheet. I think, was it Sanogo that they were talking about hadn't eaten yesterday because it was Ramadan?
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting one. That's I would love to know how like how you handle that isn't the right way to put it, because you just he's just not going to, it's not like you can be like, you have to eat before this game kind of thing. Like, it's not that it would ever be like that, but that's just that would be one of those situations as a coach that I would not in a million years think about. Like, how do I just how do I just respond to that? Like, not that there's, you get what I mean, but that's just one I would never come up with. If you said, give me all of the situations you could find yourself in as a college basketball coach, that's not one of them I would come up with. Yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, UConn was 30 of 72 from the field, 11 of 31 from the 3-point line. I mean, if I showed you those percentages and I showed you that Adama Sanogo had 10 on 11 shots, I mean, I'm probably not predicting that they beat the Gonzaga Bulldogs by 28, but that's exactly what they did. Drew Timme was in foul trouble after a truly elite game against UCLA. He was just 12 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists, but he had 4 personal fouls, and he picked up that fourth one with like 15 minutes left in the second half. That was after picking up his third about 7 seconds into the second half. So he only had 2 at halftime, and before we got to the under 12 timeout, he had 4. And never got that last one, but it didn't especially matter. He was 5 of 14 from the floor. Julian Strother held 11 on 4 of 15 shooting. And the production you got from Malachi Smith wasn't there to the same degree. In this game, Hunter Salas was 2 of 5 from the field, and your starting backcourt of Hickman, you could throw Strother in there, and Rasir Bolton was 6 of 27 from the field, and a whopping 1 of 13 from the 3-point line. They were 2 of 20 from beyond the arc, 12 of 22 from the free throw line, shot 33% from the field. Like, one of Gonzaga's worst offensive performances in the last, since before the Nigel Williams-Goss team.
It has been the dawn of time.
Right. It has been a really long time since I've seen Gonzaga look that dysfunctional offensively, and they picked a really, 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 really bad game to do it.
Yeah. First, that's a credit to UConn's defense.
Yeah, UConn's defense was really good.
Because there just is not another team in the country that is as physically imposing. I will continue to say that. It's why I just always believe they can just beat anybody, no matter how good they actually are. And obviously they've had a great season. But just look at the dudes on the floor. They're just, Sanogo and Klingon, and then all the super long athletic, Andre Jackson, Jordan Hawkins dudes.
Even Tristan Newton just looks big on the floor.
Yeah. They all just look huge. And that clearly bothered Gonzaga. Yeah.
Alex Caravan is 6'8".
Yeah.
Just for what it's worth. 6'8" freshman.
Who was he? Was he backing? Oh, I think it was Hickman. Yeah, he just took him into the post early on, and you went, well, yeah, that's... He's not stopping him there.
And then you bring in an Aline that's also a 6'4", 200-pound guard. And... Yeah. Right. Oh, and the 7'2" freshman. Right.
Yeah. The third and fourth fouls on Timme. He just flies down the court for the one. The second one, okay, you can argue.
It's a center trying to Euro step to the rim.
Yeah. And the fourth one, okay, you can argue.
The fourth one was a foul.
It probably was. And
the fourth one was a foul.
Regardless, you cannot go put your elbow into somebody like that when you're Drew Timme and you have 3 fouls in the second half of a Sweet 6 or Elite 8 game.
Mm-hmm. Unnecessarily too. Like the play was over.
Yes. What was he thinking?
I don't know.
That's one of those that I don't want to have a conversation about the call. I want to have a conversation about the thought process that led to him being in that position, because it was just completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And that, right. Not that they were going to win anyway, but that pretty much determined that it was over. And it is funny to me, this is the last thing I'll say, how we've gone from Gonzaga's been disappointing this season. Well, Gonzaga, this might be the year, to, oh yeah, those guards never really were close to good enough, were they? Just completely changing the narrative based on the fact that they survived a game that they should have won and almost threw away. Which I bought into it to a certain extent. That you can
TCU
make
too.
Yeah, and they had a close game against TCU. Yeah. Because they weren't playing great. That's the thing. You can make an argument that, look, they were finding a way to survive if they really get things clicking, if the guards start showing up. that maybe that was just the part they needed to get through.
Which is why the messaging was not, hey, has Gonzaga really been the best team all year? It was, maybe this is just the year, right? And then it very quickly it didn't take long last night for me to be like, oh right, that's why nobody was picking them to win the national championship. Oh right,
and they lose to a healthy UCLA. That also became abundantly clear.
Sure. For sure. They definitely lose to a healthy UCLA. Healthy UCLA might be the best team in the country.
There's an argument.
I think there's an argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very much in the same boat that Keontae Johnson was last night, especially in the second half. Like he just when he came in, he had 4 fouls, and he immediately took this like he got the ball on the left block and immediately made this move, like through 2 defenders, somehow got it up on the rim as a third was coming to help. And it almost went in, but it didn't. And I was
some kind of floater thing.
Yeah, right? It was like he like kind of moved across the lane, and he ended up falling and like sliding all the way to the corner of the floor.
Oh, right. And then I think Cleveland got a dunk on the other end because there was nobody that picked him up, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because, letting the 7-2 guy roam free is an interesting defensive strategy.
Also, shouts to the 7-2 guy for running the floor the way he does. And Van Gundy was all over it. as many times as he possibly could.
Did you hear what he said after that, I think it was after that.
He said something about the thing I remember most clearly was him saying that he's never seen anybody that young run the floor as well as Donovan Clingan. But there seems to be something slightly more memorable that you're about to point to.
And then he said something, I think it was after that. He said something about, I know that, modern NBA and you don't use bigs. That dude's an NBA player, just like Jordan Hawkins. He was all over the athleticism and the what's the word? The agility, I guess, maybe, of Donovan Clingan.
Can we talk about year 2 Clingan? How about that?
Yeah, that dude's gonna be a problem.
Can we talk about year 2 Clingan for a second? Jeez, you think Ryan Cockburn was a problem? My God.
Especially if that man starts learning how to stretch the floor. Oh boy.
Yes. But yeah, there was a combination of. Yeah, it was just kind of like Timmy was clearly going to force it for the next 15 minutes. And granted, he's one of the 5 best players in the country, and his team was getting smoked. So it probably
nobody else was helping him. Right.
He probably needed to force it. So that's not necessarily a knock on Timmy, but it was just they had gotten to the point so early in this game that it was like, just throw out whatever game plan we had. We got to just give the ball to our best player. This game is probably already over anyways. And it just kind of went the other direction. You looked at it was like a 15. At one point Van Gundy. Oh, it was after the little tussle that Aline got in with. I don't know if it was a tussle, but Aline fouled. I think it was Strother.
Yeah.
And he was on the line, and Van Gundy was and I was kind of half paying attention and finishing up work stuff, and then Van Gundy was like, Aline, your team is up 21. And I was like, hold the phone. UConn is up 21? And then they were up 30, and it was like, okay, we're never going, because it was like, okay, Gonzaga's down 12 after this 8-0 run to start after this 8-0 run early in the second half, and I was like, they're up 21. When did that happen? And it never got closer.
No.
Maybe it got closer right then and there when Strother hit a free throw, but but not really.
We take things very literally on this podcast.
Very literally.
Yeah.
That's all I've got on this game.
I mean, it's not entirely accurate because the first round win was by a larger margin than the second round, I think is what it was. But the better teams they play, the more they're beating them by, which is
I saw your tweet.
Terrifying. And they haven't played a bad team yet. And also the coaches that they've beat. This is, again, the question is just very simply, do they have 2 more of these in them? Because if they do, they're winning the whole thing. And if they don't, they very well maybe, if they go 5 of 27 from 3 and Dylan Dessou plays, assuming Texas wins today, they probably
inject UConn and Texas into my veins, bro.
I would
inject it in straight in there.
It's abundantly clear those are the best two teams remaining. Abundantly clear. So there is a difference between the two, though, in terms of you're not supposed to do this especially as a 4 seed too. Now, like we've talked about, they had a weird season, but this is what people would expect a 1 seed Gonzaga to do, right? That was undefeated heading in that Gonzaga team that was undefeated is to roll people like this.
Mm-hmm.
But here they are. And also, it's very interesting to me that so going back to starting in 2008, if I have the number right, a UConn team has made the Final Four every single year because the women's team streak just got snapped, and the men said, "We got this. Don't worry."
When was the last time a UConn men's team went to the Final Four and didn't win the national championship?
Has it ever happened? Hold on. 2008, 2009.
They were in the Final Four that year? The year before Kemba?
2 years before.
Oh, 2 years before. Sorry. Was that the beat team?
This was, yes. The beat. Kemba was a freshman. Jeff Adrian, AJ Price, 5. They were a 1 seed. They had 5 NBA players.
Was Jeff Green on that team? Or is that too early for Jeff Green? Was it too late for Jeff Green?
Jeff Green?
Oh, Jeff Green's Georgetown. Sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
And they lost to... Oh, that's right. This is the team that lost to Michigan State in Detroit in the Final Four. This is the year, right? So this is the year that North Carolina, the Tyler Hansborough team, steamrolled Michigan State in the championship game. They were the team that Michigan State played in the Final Four. They lost by 9.
Gotcha.
Yes, because when they get there, they win.
Because they won another one in the early 2000s, right? Am I bugging about that?
Right. So they won in 99 and then 2004.
99.
And 2004.
And 2004. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that.
So one of those would have been the Okafor team, and one of them would have been the Ray Allen team.
Was it Ray Allen and Rip Hamilton? It was the Rip Hamilton team.
Okay. Because 04 was Okafor, right?
That sounds right. Stand by. Pulling up all the rosters here. 03, 04.
Yes.
Ben
Okafor,
Gordon was on
Ben
this
Gordon,
team too, right?
Okafor, Ben Gordon. Yeah.
Jeez.
Rashad Anderson.
Charlie Villanueva. Hilton Armstrong. Josh Boone. Jeez, that team was good.
Okay, real quick before we get out of here. Creighton, San Diego State, who you got?
Blue Jays.
Give me the Blue Jays, baby. Come
We're
on to the Final Four. To the Final Four.
Right, eventually.
Miami, Texas.
Texas.
Don't mess with Texas.
They can get past that game even if Dessou doesn't play. He's day to day.
Don't you dare mess with Texas. Don't you mess with Texas. You know what I'm saying?
We've come too far. We need Texas UConn. After all this tournament's put us through, it's the least we deserve.
The least we deserve. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about both games, regardless. You know what? If San Diego State and Miami win, we might just not come back. We're sorry. We might just not come back. You might just never hear from us again. But hopefully that's not the case, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning. But please subscribe to the Jays for Days podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at Jays for Days Pod, and we'll be back tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Jays for Days podcast. I'm Josh. He's Josh. And we will see you